TIAA is on a mission. Why? Because 54% of Black Americans don't have enough savings to retire. So in collaboration with big-name artists like Wyclef Jean, TIAA released Paper Right, new music inspiring a new financial future. With 100% of streaming sales going to a nonprofit that teaches students how to invest. Stream Paper Right now and help close the gap.
Coaches shouldn't be able to call timeout. This is a very contrarian point of view, but I always thought it would be more indicative of who did a better job preparing their squad if on game day the coach couldn't call timeout, couldn't talk to them at halftime and make adjustments. They just had to figure it out for themselves.
Hi, and welcome to Deep Leadership. I'm your host, John Rennie. Well, I hope all is well with you today. It is another beautiful day here in the great state of Maine, where I'm recording and broadcasting from a cabin in the woods. Last week, I took a drive out to Yarmouth to meet with longtime friend of the show, John Brubaker, a.k.a. Coach Bru. Coach Bru is a keynote speaker, award-winning author, and executive coach known for his unique approach to performance enhancement. He's the guy I went to help me get the Deep Leadership podcast started. We recorded a special joint podcast discussing the parallels between sports leadership, military leadership, and business leadership, which I think you will enjoy. As a reminder, Deep Leadership is brought to you this month by our sponsors, Ignite Management Services and Liberty Strength. These sponsors help me bring these shows to you each and every week, so I encourage you to click on their links below and check them out. Also, I want to encourage you to join us on our growing YouTube channel. Search for Deep Leadership on YouTube for videos of all my interviews and exclusive content. Well, that is it. I hope you enjoyed this special joint episode with me and the great Coach Bru. So, are you ready to dive in? Let's get started.
Welcome to Deep Leadership. Leadership is a people business. That's the philosophy of your podcast host, John Rennie. As a former Cold War submarine officer who spent 20 plus years leading businesses in corporate America before starting his own manufacturing business, he knows that leadership matters. Are you ready for some real-world actionable advice from John as well as his expert guests?
I'm ready.
The show starts right now.
And we are live on the Coach Bru podcast and the
Deep Leadership podcast.
Both of us, well, John Rennie and John Brubaker, recording from the friendly confines of Coach Bru's studio. And what exactly would you call this?
I don't know.
Dual podcast?
It's a joint podcast.
Well, that stuff's legal now, so yeah. I mean,
Well,
it's like Joe Rogan-esque.
Very much
It's
so.
joint.
We are in Maine. We're recording in Maine at Coach Bru's studio here in Maine. And by the way, pot is legal here in Maine because every small town we've been driving through has a dispensary. So is it, I guess, recreational and medicinal, right?
It's the state flower, I believe.
Okay.
Keep talking. I'm going to turn off the AC.
All right.
You look like you're getting a little chilly.
I'm okay. So good to see everybody here on the podcast. We're going to do a joint podcast today. We're going to talk a little bit about leadership from two different perspectives. Coach Bru was a college lacrosse coach. I did time in the military on submarines, as you well know, those who know me. And we'll talk a little bit about leadership from two different perspectives.
You did time? You make it sound like you're in prison.
Well, have you ever been locked on a submarine for 100 days? It's
Good
pretty
point.
much like that. Yeah.
I did time at a college.
You did time.
Yeah. I'm a recovering lacrosse coach. So, yeah, I think, the reason we chose this topic is because you see so many parallels in like sports and the military. And some of them might be valid, but I think a lot are bunk.
Yeah. One thing I like, I've had you on my podcast before, and one of the things we talked about.
I've had you on my podcast before.
Yeah,
Are we keeping score?
I think so. No, we're not keeping score. But one of the things that you said, and it's always stood with me, is that a coach, you recruit the players, you train up the team, you prepare for the game, but then you step off the field and your players have to do the work. And I think that is one of the the areas where I think in corporate America, at least, leaders struggle with that. They can't step off the field. They want to be right in the middle of it.
Yeah, you just described every micromanaging middle manager in America.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's one of the parallels that I've always felt like that's a great leader will do that, step off the field and let their players play and let them execute the plays.
And that's where I do think there is a parallel with the military because so like, let's take, for example, Navy SEAL Team 6 did the Bin Laden raid. They set up a model, like full-size model of that compound, wherever they set it up. I'm assuming somewhere stateside, right?
Yeah.
And they trained, like taking the helicopters, breaching, the perimeter of it and how they're going to enter the building. They trained all that. And their leadership coached them up through that in the training. And it's kind of like an athletic team at practice. You have a scouting report on your opponent, and you're being trained and coached up. You have game film to watch. They're probably able to watch film on, their approach to the compound, in their training and everything. But then, when it was go time, and they were actually over there, headed into like Islamabad, there's nothing that, their commanding officer, the commander, the head of the military, whoever's in charge of that mission, there's nothing that person could do because they weren't in the helicopter with them. You can't call timeout. There's no coaching you can do in the moment. I think that's where it's very similar to college athletics is like practice is where you can train, teach, and lead. But then I think it's up to your players to execute. And I always thought that like coaches shouldn't be able to call timeout. This is a very contrarian point of view.
Yeah.
Like everybody who's a coach listening to me is either tuning me out or saying, you're an idiot, no way. But I always thought it would be more indicative of who did a better job preparing their squad if on game day the coach couldn't call timeout, couldn't talk to them at halftime and make adjustments. Like they just had to figure it out for themselves and lead themselves and coach themselves in the moment on the quote battlefield, as we like to make all those, war metaphors with sports and what have you.
Yeah.
And I think most coaches would be afraid of that because they want to have that sense of control, and you see so often in games that go into overtime, as soon as like one team gets possession of the ball in overtime, coach calls timeout when they get on offense and they're going to draw up some brilliant, genius play. I never did that. Just let them play. Now first of all, you're letting the defense get set up.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're giving them time to react to you and get their personnel they want on the field. Let players play. And I think that speaks to what you do when you're on a mission in the military. Like, there's you're on your own.
Yeah, there's no timeout.
Yeah.
Sure.
Fail or succeed.
But the other thing, too, I think, when you call a timeout like this, and I don't know if you said it in one of your books or I had maybe one of my guests.
Was it something memorable and brilliant?
It was.
So then it definitely came from me in one of my books.
But I think what it does is sends a signal, I don't trust you, to your players. I don't trust you, right? And the training that we did, I want to stop the game and I want to tell you how to do things, right? And so, and actually, the players get nervous, too, that like, okay, so he's called timeout. Yeah. This is now escalating, right? To where now they're getting nervous and they might make a mistake because they're nervous. So
to your point, like when the other team would call timeout during the critical situation, end of game situation, end of half, like stressful, 1-goal game or tie game or whatever. You know what I like to do during that timeout? Crack a joke.
Yeah. Yeah. Break the tension.
Point out like an attractive girl in the crowd on the other side of the field, like something to just like get the guys to laugh and relax and realize, hey, it's just a game.
Yeah.
Because what happens when you're tight with anything? What happens when you're tight with anything, John?
Oh, you get nervous and you're going to mess up. And when you think the stakes are high, and I don't want to make a mistake, I don't want to be a headline of the loss of this game, and instead of your best players wanting the ball in the last seconds, right? Nobody wants the ball because they don't want to be the person that loses the game instead of wanting to win the game. So
there's that old Navy saying, is a Navy SEAL expression, slow is smooth and smooth is fast.
Yeah.
And that sounds very counterintuitive, but it's true.
Yeah.
Slow is smooth because you're not pressing, you're not nervous.
Right.
You're not making mistakes. It's smooth and methodical. And ultimately, smooth is fast because, what happens when you rush things unnecessarily?
Yeah.
You make mistakes. You're in a hurry. Like, you're off by just, a fraction of a second or a fraction of an inch with whatever you're doing.
Sports, yeah, exactly.
In sports or in anything,
Well, the parallels in the business world, I've seen it too, where when stakes are higher, you get the manager, calling meetings and wanting to be involved, and I need a briefing every day, and what it does is it makes the team nervous, and so they're not the same thing. They're not on the top of their game. They're worried about their jobs. They're worried about failing so they go on the defense instead of the offense.
And if I'm one of them, you know what I'm thinking? Why'd you hire me?
Yeah.
Like, you don't trust me. B, like, you need to micromanage me.
Yeah.
Did you hire the wrong people?
Yeah.
Yeah,
micromanage.
If I'm that manager's boss, I'm thinking, did you hire the wrong people? Why do you need to supervise them so closely?
Yeah, micromanagement says I don't trust you. Yeah, I need updates. I need details. We're gonna pause the game, and I'm gonna tell you what to do because I don't trust you to make the right decision. It's not good for the person, the follower, to feel like their boss doesn't trust them.
And don't you think, like, even when you do, like, the general you, even when you do trust them, a lot of times it's the human condition to intervene, to just make sure, to double check, to stop them, remind them, like. And I think that might be one of, and I'd like to get your take on what is one of, if not the hardest aspects of leadership. I think letting go.
Yeah.
In those situations, like, one of the hardest challenges for a leader is to let go.
Yeah.
And, you've got a pretty big ego and you love to honk your own horn. So let me just try and beat you to it before you say what, and I'm being sarcastic here, folks. John's like the most humble, unassuming person you'll ever meet, which is part of what makes him, one of the many things that makes him a great leader. But I will say this, at the time of this recording, John is in my office in Maine, not in his office in North Carolina. He has been up here for the last month in a cabin. It's kind of like a Unabomber cabin, I think, but
it is
in a cabin on a lake, vacationing up here in Maine. And a lot of times when the leader is absent, there's absent leadership. When the leader is absent, that's a bad thing. At your company right now, the leader has not been there. I don't want to say you were absent because I think your influence is felt when you're not there. But you haven't physically been on the premises for a month.
Yeah.
And the message that sends is, I trust you.
Yeah.
I am capable of letting go because I know I hired qualified, competent people. I think it's the mark of a great leader in a great company that everything functions smoothly when they're not there.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
So I want to give you your kudos on all of that. Whether it's true or not, folks, I have no idea. I haven't seen video footage of his manufacturing plant. I don't know how much time he spends on Zoom or like watching security cameras. But no, just the fact that you are comfortable enough to say, you know what, I'm going to take this time. And so let me ask you, what leading up to this, did you have to do anything special in preparation to take this time away? Or
I feel like I can take the time because I have a good team and I do trust them and they are taking care of it. A lot of times I feel like sometimes like I'm in the way, like my team is highly capable and they know what to do in every circumstance. And I'm there for, when there's a conflict and they don't understand, there's two options that are pretty close and which way should we go? I kind of get that question a lot. But in most cases, they know the mission of the company, what we're trying to accomplish, and I trust them to be able to carry it out. And I think one of the things with entrepreneurs is, and I see this a lot, and I talk to a lot of guests on my podcast, where they get stuck with growth because the owner can't let go.
Yeah.
Right. And they have to control everything. Whatever made them great. So maybe it's a pizza joint and the guy just makes a great pizza. Right. He doesn't trust his people to make a great pizza because he's the only one he thinks they can make that pizza or whatever it is. And, they have this one thing that made them great and caused their growth. And so it's fear-based, right? So they don't want to let go of that one thing that they're good at because that's their comfort zone. And I think that's a challenge with entrepreneurs, is being able to let go and loosen your grip a little bit on those things.
And the fascinating thing for me with this is to put a sports parallel in there. When you see a coach get a technical foul and get ejected early in the game, or, they get sanctioned for violations and they have to sit out like the first, they have to sit out, 8 games or whatever. And the team plays better without them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why is that?
Yeah.
Is it just that the assistant had better answers all this time and he was holding out?
Yeah.
No, they play freer because that head coach is usually a little too controlling, won't let go.
Yeah.
And they're able to exercise their judgment and play without feeling second guessed. Maybe there's more trust on the field or on the court or wherever. But it's always interesting to me to see, when the coach is ejected, do they play better or worse without him? When he has to sit out a number of games, are they playing better? Or what's their record when he had to sit out versus, let's say he had to sit out 3 games and then he came back. What's their record the next 3 games?
Interesting.
Just that whole process of how free are your people? And you could take that out of sports and put it in corporate America, the military, anywhere, your classroom. How free are your people to exercise their good judgment and utilize their talents and unique abilities without you looking over their shoulder or having them under a microscope?
One thing that I was thinking about when you're talking about coaching and then you're talking about the SEAL teams, one of the things that stood out to me in my time in the military was, and I talked about it, I had someone from NASA on my podcast recently, and he was actually responsible for running the launches for the space shuttle. And we were talking about what that's like. And he said, well,
it's not rocket science.
Well, it truly is rocket science. But he talked about how they trained so much that it was just muscle memory. And I think that all my time in the military, we were doing some pretty serious stuff. But we never even thought of it as serious because we trained and we trained and we trained, and it was all muscle memory when it came to real execution.
So pretty serious stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. For people who are maybe discovering your podcast or mine for the very first time, don't know you and don't know the details of your background in the Navy, define pretty serious stuff for those folks and exactly what sort of ship you served on and what you did.
Yeah, so anybody who's followed the Titanic submarine situation, I mean, I was on submarines. I was on U.S. Navy submarines, nuclear submarines. At the end of the Cold War, I was on the USS Tennessee. She had a nuclear reactor, 24 nuclear weapons, and a bunch of 18-year-old kids running it. So we would deploy for 100 days at a time, and I was one of the officers on board. There's 15 officers and crew of 140.
Those kids are the same age as a lot of college athletes.
Yeah, exactly.
Parallel.
There's a lot of parallels there. Yeah, and we were young too. We were, our commanding officer was the old man, but I think he was in his early 40s.
The old man of the sea?
Yeah, he was the old man in his early 40s. And we were in our 20s and we were doing, just to give you an example of one, I was the missile officer on our last 3 patrols. And one of the things I had to do was to climb inside a nuclear missile and make sure everything was properly set before you went out to sea. So they trusted some 20-year-old kid to climb inside a nuclear weapon. And, that's serious stuff that we were doing.
Hang on. Okay. I remember asking you about that. And just I told you, I toured a submarine in Connecticut.
Yeah.
And the second I climbed down the ladder and got in, I got super claustrophobic.
Oh, yeah.
And I had to get out. and I'm claustrophobic. And I remember asking you, like, I don't know how you did that. Never mind, like, when it went underwater and you're at the bottom of the ocean. And you're like, it didn't bother me at all. As a matter of fact, when I had to go into those missile tubes, I would go in there. They'd close the door behind me. And I remember you telling me you found it what?
Relaxing.
Yeah, peaceful, I think were your exact words. It's relaxing and peaceful to be in a nuclear missile, like torpedo tube, closed in there at the bottom of the ocean.
Yeah. Not quite.
Have you lost your freaking mind? Wow.
It's funny because I don't like heights, right? So when I'm
Okay.
I don't care to be close to an edge of a cliff or a lighthouse or a thing I don't like heights, right? But when it comes to anything like tight spaces, things like that, it doesn't bother me at all. And I think if you're going to serve on a submarine,
it's kind of the opposite of heights.
Yeah, right. Exactly. You're not going to fall very far because you're tight. But I think if you volunteer to serve on a submarine, you don't have a problem with claustrophobia. I mean, I don't even think about it. Never thought it was a thing until I got out of the Navy. Yeah. And I talked to a lot of people like, oh, I could never do that. I'm like, what do you mean you can never do it? I could never go under the ocean. Like I'd feel, tight. Well, I used to, when I was younger, I used to do a lot of cavern diving when I lived in Florida. So we would go into these open water cave systems.
In another life, John was Florida man. You got a little Florida man in you, John.
I'm New England man, but I was living in Florida. But just being down there and, you turn off your light and it would just be pitch dark and you're underwater. Like people would freak out about that. But to me, it's relaxing. It's a weird thing.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Very.
Yeah.
For someone like me, different strokes for different folks.
But I couldn't jump out of an airplane.
Oh, no, perfectly good airplane? Unless someone's shooting at it, no.
I mean, I think I would pass away before my chute opened. I was really that scared.
Wow.
But, yeah. But we got off track.
Yeah.
One thing I was going to say,
you found it relaxing.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where we're going with this.
Oh.
But, like, high-pressure situation where the stakes are high. You were in a nuclear sub during the Cold War.
Yeah.
And you found that environment relaxing. So some of that, I imagine, is nature versus nurture, or nature and nurture. So how much of that is your nature, and how much of that is, to your point, the muscle memory, and this is just SOP, standard operating procedure. This is just what we do. Is normal.
So I think probably part of it is I dreamed to do this job, right? I was like some kids dream of being an astronaut, a fireman, police officer. I dreamt of being an officer on a nuclear submarine. So I was doing my dream job. So that's part of it. So my desire was there.
Yep.
Then there was so much training and so many reps that whenever I had, I was the officer deck going in and out of port, or we were doing an emergency ascent or whatever the more difficult thing we were doing, I never got nervous. I never even thought about it because I had done it so often. The Navy did a really good job of giving us opportunities to learn and fail many times before they gave us the watch on our own. So I think that's part of the training and development they did, which was to give us opportunities to learn, to fail, to get better. And then they give us the opportunity to lead. So
that's the ultimate laboratory right there.
It is.
Being somewhere where you do have the opportunity to fail without
controlled failure.
Life-altering consequences.
Yeah, controlled failure is one of the most powerful teaching tools. And the reason being is that we don't like to fail. There's you have an emotional reaction to failure. You don't want to be embarrassed. You don't want to look like a fool, right? So when you fail, you want to figure out why you failed, and you want to turn that around. And so sometimes leaders prevent failure. So they don't want anyone on their team to fail. They want to control everything. It's like kids, not letting your kids fail.
Oh, we wrap them in bubble wrap.
We wrap them in bubble wrap, and so they've never had those experiences. So they don't have the resilience.
Yeah.
They have not built up the ability to deal with failure. So I think one of the things the Navy did right was giving us these opportunities to fail in a controlled manner to where we can learn and get better. And I think it's something we don't do enough of in companies.
And I feel like athletics and the military are the last bastions of controlled failure.
I think you're right.
Where, because it's not happening in the school system.
Not at all.
We'll be right back after a quick word from our sponsors.
Leadership skills are like any other skills. You need to practice them to get better at them. Best-selling leadership author John S. Rennie knows this. That's why he's written a new book called You Have the Watch. It's a guided journal for leaders designed to take you through an entire year of leadership training. By the end of the year, you will master 50 of the most important leadership skills. If you want to have a greater impact on the results and people in your organization, go to youhavethewatch.com and pick up your copy today.
This episode is brought to you by Ignite Management Services. Ignite is led by Mike Watson, who you might remember from episode 137. Mike and his team believe that everything starts with leadership, whether it's strategy execution or cultural transformation. It's the role of the leader to create the conditions for their people to succeed. The team at Ignite can help you develop critical habits to enhance your leadership capability and transform your business. Ignite Management is now offering the Resilient Leadership Assessment Tool. This is an online questionnaire designed to assess and guide leadership development, coaching, and team building. It provides leaders an opportunity to gain insights into their leadership strengths and development needs. After taking this assessment, you will receive a custom, detailed report that provides practical and actionable recommendations to enhance your effectiveness. I have taken this assessment myself and found it to be extremely valuable in helping me make changes to my leadership approach. Right now, Ignite is offering 15% off the price of this tool to the deep leadership audience. Go to ignitemanagement.ca and enter the code START15 at checkout to get started today. This episode is brought to you by Jeremy Clevenger at Liberty Strength. As a high-performing leader, you know that leadership isn't about telling people what to do, it's about leading by example. And for most people, the one area that they are lacking when it comes to leading by example is their health and fitness. By improving your health and fitness, every other area of your life improves. Your energy skyrockets, your sleep improves, your confidence increases, and more. But how can you get and stay fit as a busy leader? Well, you do what you've always done. You hire the best people for the job. Don't struggle on your own. Put Liberty Strength in your corner. Jeremy and his team will work with you to take your physique, mindset, nutritional habits, and more to the next level with his step-by-step, all-inclusive coaching program. I've worked with Liberty Strength for the past 2 years, and I'm in the best shape of my life, and I'm still hitting strength personal records at 56 years old. If you want to step up your game, reach out to Jeremy at libertystrengthtx.com to find out more and get your initial consultation scheduled with him today.
No child left behind. Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. Everyone's above average.
Yeah.
Everyone should go to college. You know, the trades are bad. Like, they're setting up very unrealistic expectations. And then when kids, young adults, get out in the real world and your boss doesn't have tenure like your professor did, and you're not just being passed along, they're really in for a culture shock.
Yeah.
But in the military and in athletics, it's that meritocracy where you tend to have leaders who are wise enough to create an environment of controlled failure as a teaching tool and, you know, to use kind of successive approximations to step 1, step 2, step 3, a process to get to an outcome. You know, that's why I'm such a big proponent of, you know, participation in both of those arenas for people, young adults.
Yeah, and so for people listening in might say, well, how do you do control failure in a corporate environment? And I worked in corporate for 22 years, and one of the things I did was, you know, when I'd see an employee that sort of had some potential, so I could see them taking responsibility, you know, you know what it's like. When you're in a room, you can see a natural leader. Everyone's listening to that person. They're sort of directing things, and even when they don't have a rank or they don't have the position to do it. So I would find these individuals and I would give them these stretch assignments. I would put them on I'd have them lead a small team to get something done that was, a lot of times it was outside their comfort zone. It was a stretch assignment. It was something, and it was twofold. One is I wanted to see what they would do, but I also wanted them to get the experience of having some failure and to learn from that failure. And it gave me great data points on that individual, so I could tell whether or not I've got someone that had potential to take it to the next level.
There's a key word that you use that I want to go back to.
Sure.
Stretch.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think that there's a delicate balance in stretch assignments. Like how far do you stretch that person? Because, if you push someone, way too far out, they could be set up to fail unknowingly. You might unknowingly be setting them up to fail. So what's your measuring stick for stretch for people?
So it's interesting.
And I know it's case by case.
No,
but walk me through that.
I want to say this is one of the things I had in my opportunity in my life. I was 32 years old and I had never run a manufacturing plant in my life. And I had a leader that said, go run this manufacturing plant. So he gave me an assignment that I was not qualified to do. It was the ultimate stretch assignment. Go take on your own manufacturing plant with 140 people in a town where I knew nobody, right? And but so in my mind, I'm thinking, give a big stretch, right? But over the years, I've given stretch assignments to people, and they have fallen flat on their face. And I've had one in particular, a marketing guy I really thought he could take it to the next level. Gave him a big project. He felt.
Are we talking about our old podcast producer, Parker?
Not at all.
Okay.
Not at all. But he fell on his face, and was interesting because he said, I want to be a manager. I want to get in management. So I gave him this opportunity, and he fell flat on his face. And one of the things it told me right there is there's a data point. Okay, he wasn't ready. And could he be ready in the future? Maybe, but he clearly wasn't ready. But I gave him the opportunity, and he learned too that he wasn't ready too. So both of us. So he stopped asking me, "I want to be in management. I want to be in management." He's like, "Oh shoot, this is hard work." I'm like, "It is." Yeah. I mean, so I think it's important to give people those opportunities. I don't know if it too much is. I don't know. I haven't found one. I've never given one that's maybe too much. But it's because of my personal experience getting that plant at 32 years old, I feel like anyone can do anything. But I know it's not true. I do know it's not true. But I mean, I had a really good team at that plant that basically, I had employees at that plant who'd been at the plant longer than I've been alive. So it was pretty easy when I took over to just don't.
It's the same at the same time.
Don't screw it up.
A tough dynamic for you though because of that.
Yeah. And that's an interesting thing too, which you don't see so much in college coaching, but you do see it in leadership in the business world. Is oftentimes you might get a leadership assignment where you're not the oldest and you're not the most experienced person, but yet you're in charge. It's rare that happens in the military too, because it's a progression system.
Yeah, I think the only time you see that in college coaching is the head coach gets fired in the middle of the year.
Oh, right.
And let's say it's a football staff. You get staff of almost 24 people, 12, 15 coaches between coordinators and position coaches, special teams, and they promote one assistant to interim head coach. It might not be the 64-year-old coordinator who's been a head coach before, has taken a step back to move up a level into, Power 5 football or whatever. It might be like when Dabo Swinney was the secondary, I believe he was a secondary coach at Clemson. And when Tommy Bowden got fired, I think it was Tommy Bowden got fired from Clemson, Dabo got promoted over some other people who were coordinators and, had more experience. And that was kind of sink or swim for him. That was a stretch assignment. Yeah. But those opportunities, I do think, are few and far between. Yeah. Because there tends to be that kind of, what do you want to call it, graduated career progression.
Yeah, career progression, typically. Yeah. I think the one area in the military where you see it is, like when you're a young officer and you first arrive on board, is that you're responsible for an enlisted, team of enlisted sailors who may have more seniority and your rank is higher theoretically, but your experience level and your age, your time on earth is a lot lower.
Oh, you're a college boy who went to OCS.
That's exactly it. Yeah,
this is cute. That'd be fun.
Oh yeah. And shout out to Chief Nunez, my first petty officer I worked for. I mean, he worked for me, but I kind of feel like I worked for him. Yeah. And he was patient enough to let me, learn the role of leadership. I think when I see in the military, I see a lot of senior enlisted. I think that's a hard job when you've got a lot more experience and you have a lot more knowledge than this young junior officer coming out of the academy or ROTC or OCS. and they're in charge, right? But it takes a special person to be able to handle that role and to be able to be that, that right-hand man.
A team player.
That's a team player, a real true team player. And I remember I had a sailor working for me, Petty Officer Gemini was his name. And when I was in the missile department, I was the missile officer. And I remember I would give him a task and he would say, "Yes, sir, I'll take care of that." And I'd give him another one. He's like, "Yes, sir, I'll take care of that." And one time I stopped him. I said, every time I ask you to do something, you just say, "Yes, sir," and you take care of it, And he goes, "Well," he said, "I could argue with you." He said, "But it's easier just to say yes, sir, and then do it my way."
And he has a point.
And I thought that's amazing.
That's some life experience there.
Yeah, he would just say, "Yes, sir, I'll take care of it." And he would do it, whatever needed to get done, he'd do it, but he'd probably do it his own way. And things got done, and there was no arguments to be had. Yeah. But I think being that right-hand man, I've had to do it one time where someone got promoted over me in a corporate setting, and he wasn't very experienced in operations. I had zero operation experience. He was a sales guy, and he got made the general manager, and I was his ops manager, his right-hand man. And so everything we did was ops. Like there was nothing, there was very little sales and marketing that we did. And I remember being in that role thinking, this guy's underqualified, and I probably should be in the role, but he's in the role. But I resolved myself to be that right-hand man. And I purposely, every time we had a meeting, I would sit on his right-hand side. I purposely physically did it so it would remind me to say, I'm not in charge. I'm his right-hand man. I'm here to make him successful. And that's what I did. And I think that's a hard thing for some people to do, is take that right-hand man position, because everybody wants to be in charge, right? Or they want the limelight. So, yeah.
Did you just assume your gender?
Did I really?
As right-hand man?
Oh, yeah. Well, is that just a common comment?
Are we even allowed to say that anymore?
I don't know. That's a good question.
It's probably offensive to lefties. And by that, I mean left-handed people.
Well, to be a right-hand person, you can call it that, right? Yeah. I don't know. That's a good point.
If you're right-handed, that's like the patriarchy of handedness.
Yeah.
Not to get too political or politically correct, but it's probably the patriarchy of handedness.
Being right-handed?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Right-hand privilege.
Right. I just thinking the same thought.
It's a right-handed world that left-handed people live in.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah.
But hey, they got the left-handed Whopper.
Oh, yeah. We talked about that back on our old podcast.
Yeah. If you're looking to go down a rabbit hole, podcast, the artist formerly known as the X Factor podcast, or we talk about all kinds of crazy stuff. It's just me and John riffing about wild things in the world and corporate America. And there's an episode about the left-handed Whopper, I think.
Yeah, that was a good time. It's they're still out there, and I think they're still rated E for explicit. I don't know why though.
People could figure that out after listening to an episode or two. But yeah, there's just so many parallels. I think letting go is one of the hardest leadership strategies.
Yeah,
or things in your leadership toolbox. What would you say is one of the toughest things about being a leader?
So the one that I hear a lot about leadership is, you hear this a lot. I say, I don't want to be a leader. I don't want to deal with the people problems. So people problems, I hear that all the time. I think
businesses would be great if it weren't for the people.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's like, if I get rid of my customers, I have no more complaints, right? But I think, when I hear that comment, I say probably that person isn't ready for leadership, because really what it boils down to is people. I mean, to be able to, it's about motivating a group of people to get something done. That is leadership. And so if you don't like people, if you don't want to deal with the messiness that is people, then it's probably not a good place for you to be, is in a leadership role. Because this is something that's truly parallel between the military, business, and I'm sure the coaching, is that people are messy. You're dealing with all these different personalities and all these different hang-ups and fears and, belief systems and confidence levels. And people are messy. But they are also, I would say this, on the other side of the coin, people are amazing. And if you can figure out the amazing part and you can sort of overcome the messiness, then I think you're going somewhere. And leadership is about customizing your approach to every person working for you. And I imagine in coaching, it's a lot of the same.
It is. You want to put individuals in a position to succeed, and that position looks different for each person on your roster. I think that what you touched on, being a people business, is whether it's the military, team, sports team, or company, like people are your greatest asset.
Yeah.
And they're also your biggest liability in many cases.
Yeah, they can be.
Yeah, it gets down to like talent acquisition and the recruiting process. And it's kind of funny you mentioned the people side of things. I had tweeted earlier today, and you want to follow me at Coach Bru. It's not even Twitter anymore. It's X, right?
It's X, isn't it? Yeah, it's X.
I X'd or tweeted this the other day, or this morning rather. It is a miracle that college, and I believe this, it's a miracle that college coaches can win today. Because if you look at what college campuses have become, it's essentially a 4-year reality TV show set on an all-expenses-paid co-ed resort with no supervision, no accountability, and limitless booze. And those kids, that's supposed to be a learning environment for student athletes, and they're supposed to be high performers on and off the field. But look at the the amenities and the living arrangements and the conditions.
It's like an all-inclusive resort.
Is it possible? Yeah, it's like Sandals Resort, at different campuses.
I never thought of it that way.
Is it possible that we can make our team members or our employees accommodations too comfortable? Because you see, there are certain colleges, I won't name names, but one comes to mind where it's like the Ritz-Carlton of colleges. It's probably not too far from you in North Carolina, where the newspaper is left at your doorstep every morning.
Oh, boy.
You can get wake-up calls ordered to your phone in your room. There is a 5-star restaurant on the campus where the students can eat once a week. An ice cream cart gets pushed around the quad every afternoon. They have free ice cream for the students.
Wow.
Swimming pools. I mean, it's a country club. It's not a college campus. It's essentially they're living in the lap of luxury. Is it possible for us to be making the environment a little too comfortable for the people we're leading?
It's a good question. I mean, I would say, I always say that probably one of the greatest gifts I was given is not growing up rich, like growing up sort of poor, because I think adversity and, going from nothing to having something, I think gives you you really do appreciate it.
Yeah.
When you have everything all the time, then you get spoiled, right? And then, you get that entitlement syndrome where you expect everyone to treat you a certain way, what have you. I think that, adversity is good for us. It builds our character.
It introduces you to yourself.
Yeah. You learn what...
in a way nothing else will.
Yeah, you learn what you're capable of. Yeah. And I think that's important. However, when it comes to leadership, I do try to make it a good environment for my employees, right? So I do bring snacks in. I do have drinks in the fridge.
Is there an ice sculpture, a chocolate fountain?
No.
Are you serving surf and turf at lunch?
No, I do make brisket.
Do you push an ice cream cart around the warehouse, the manufacturing warehouse every afternoon?
Not every afternoon.
Yeah, I think there is value to roughing it and value to being hungry.
Yeah.
I mean that literally. The example I would give, 2 former student athletes of mine, I won't name names, both very funny in college, very like stand-up comedian funny. And they both, I mentioned this on my podcast before, so if you've heard this before, you know where I'm going. They both decided to pursue stand-up comedy careers after college. One of them quit his, air quotes, job and moved to LA to just do sets every night and, pursue a full-time career in comedy. The other one kept his full-time day job and just whenever he could, he would do sets like at the local open mic in the evenings in his city. And I was talking to him about it, and he's frustrated that he wasn't more successful, and he's been grinding and doing this for many years. And the other person who went all in had what seemed like a meteoric rise by comparison. They were friends. They were teammates. They know each other well. And I said, why haven't you really committed to doing this? And he said, it's hard to be funny when you're hungry.
Yeah.
I like to eat.
Yeah.
And I said, it's hard to be successful when you're not.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it.
You know?
Yeah.
And so I think, when that person's willing to be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And not, when they're willing to experience those hunger pains and be uncomfortable, that's when they'll really be all in. And the results will start to come. I do think it is possible for us to make things too comfortable for the people we lead.
Yeah.
Yeah. I go back to some of our more successful teams are the ones that had the shittiest locker room.
Yeah.
And when it got really nice and when the locker room was comfortable and they had a brand new couch and, beautiful wooden lockers that you could just sit in, they were big, phone booths, to get changed in. It just changed the dynamics of the mindset of the team, really. They lost that edge. They lost that chip on their shoulder.
Yeah.
And they weren't as hungry and they weren't as successful.
I mean, this is the Rocky analogy, right? Rocky won, he was hungry,
He wasn't eating the steaks. He was using them as a punching bag.
Bags, yeah. Yeah, but, I think you're right. I think there's something to be said. And I guess I would say this is that I've been in different environments in the military where it was almost a sense of pride that we didn't have stuff,
Wasn't that why everybody makes fun of the Air Force?
Yeah, because it's exactly right.
Yeah, they have an Air Force base. They build the golf course first, then they build the dining facilities, and whatever money's left over, they build the runway and the training facilities.
You're right. Exactly.
And the barracks. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
But yeah, so go ahead.
No, I just think there's a sense of pride when you suffer through something that's difficult and you almost you get I think now I'm older now, so I'm nostalgic to those time periods where you were just suffering and grinding and trying to get something through, and you didn't have any, you were just hungry. I write in one of my books, my second book, about my time at Nuke Power School. I shouldn't have been there, right? I mean, there was the guys that were there were so much smarter than me, so much more capable of me, and it just was like boot camp for geeks, basically.
Yeah.
And I didn't quite qualify to get there. I just barely got in. But I would say getting through that 6 months was the toughest thing I've ever done in my life. It's also like the high water mark in my life where I think to myself, if I can do that, I can do just about anything, And I think we need those experiences in our lives where we suffer and we strive towards a goal to where we say, hey, if I've done that, then, pretty much the sky's the limit of what I can do. And nothing in my corporate life ever was as hard as that. No. Nothing in my entrepreneurial life has ever been as hard as that. So to me, when you've had those really difficult times and you've struggled through something, then you're like, it builds a level of confidence. You're like, oh, it's not that bad. And you're more calm when things go wrong in corporate or go wrong as an entrepreneur.
I think it does wonders for your problem-solving ability.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
It's that is one area that really is fascinating to me. And I do believe that in our adversity lies our advantage in whatever it is, whatever industry we're in.
Yeah.
Athletics, military, business. You have to have that struggle to become a creative problem solver, to become a little more hungry and motivated. And I think comfort, what do you say? Comfort is a cage.
It is. Yeah. Yeah. It is. And I think, for those who are listening in who might be entrepreneurs and you're thinking to yourself, well, I don't have the funds of the big companies. I don't have the cash.
Good.
Yeah. It's like, great. Now you can outmaneuver them. You can, you can take them out. You can do things that they are unable to do because you're quicker, you're nimbler, you're hungrier. and you're willing to take risks that they would never even dream of doing. So you're at a competitive advantage when you're smaller than when you're bigger, because they're typically bigger companies are resting on their laurels. They're successful. They're not worried about.
They're protecting their market share and they're playing defense, not offense.
And you get an opportunity to play offense. And I saw so many small companies use, for example, COVID as an opportunity to move ahead in there, and just creative things that they did. And then we saw other companies just kind of go out of business. They just faltered when the tough times came. But it was just fun to see certain companies, doing a shift, making a change, and becoming bigger because of their being hungry and being creative. Like, okay, well that income stream went away. What else am I going to do?
Yep.
That was fun to watch, I thought. Yeah.
It was fascinating. It really was. And I know I asked you this question, looking back at the time, I had asked everyone I knew, like, what do you think is going to be the industry that just completely dies and never comes back?
Yeah.
And I thought it was going to be movie theaters. I would have bet the mortgage it was going to be movie theaters.
Yeah.
Because you saw Netflix, like things just released to streaming, never went to a theater, like major movies from major production companies. And movie theaters kind of bounced back a little bit. They're probably not where they were pre-COVID, but I got that one wrong.
Yeah.
What did you think was just going to never come back?
Well,
what happened to it?
So one of the things I was thinking about was the commercial real estate, and I think that's still struggling right now. I think
that might be the next bubble, huh?
Yeah, I think that was a big one that I thought, because everybody was working from home, you had all these, empty buildings essentially with all this infrastructure where you used to bring people to work all the time.
Yeah.
And even today, I think that companies are struggling to make that decision. Do we go back to work, or do we still work from home? And
do you see what they're doing with shopping malls that are like ghost towns now?
Oh, no.
They're turning them into pickleball courts.
Really?
All over the country, yeah.
Wow.
From Ohio to Arizona. Yeah, one of my friends from high school is really into pickleball, and we were talking about this the other day on his podcast.
Yeah.
And they're like, that's one creative use of commercial real estate. Mm. These old, because shopping malls are pretty much a thing of the past.
Yeah.
With e-commerce, and it's interesting.
Huh. Yeah, we have where my factory is in Wilson, North Carolina, we have a sort of an abandoned mall I drive by every morning, and I think to myself, it's just sad to see that, because it's a time that doesn't exist anymore. Like that. Yeah. That time doesn't, we're, the 80s and the 90s when the mall culture was there, probably less than that.
Mall culture.
Yeah.
Wow.
Right?
That's almost an oxymoron. Mall
well, but it was.
Culture.
It was like when they started building these malls, I think it was the 80s, right? Mm-hmm. And then everybody hung out at the mall. All the young people hung out in the mall.
Oh, yeah, in the food court.
And Spencer.
The arcade.
Yeah. The arcade and Spencer Gifts. That's pretty much where we...
You probably went to that one naughty section of Spencer's Gifts.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They're marketing to young men.
Oh, absolutely. There's no question. Man, this is... it's interesting. It's like, how far away from the pandemic do you think we are currently? Like, how long ago was it? Like, when that COVID was what years? At the time of this recording is August of 2023.
Yeah. So last year we were pretty much out of it.
Okay. You know what I saw last night?
No.
I went to Staples to get copies made of a workbook for this workshop I'm doing in Texas next week. And I'm in the copy center, the print center, and they have those enormous floor-standing plastic plexiglass barriers between the self-service photocopiers.
So they're still up there.
They're still there. Wow. I had to get some help from the manager of the copy center. I'm like, this is still a thing? Why are these still here? And he was like, yeah, I know. I have no idea. I'm like, wow.
Do you know,
they're almost as tall as the receipts they give you.
Is it bad as CVS?
Almost. You can make a scarf out of them. What were you going to say?
No, I was going to say I still have my mask. I have like a
Still wear it.
a cloth mask that I have
Do you
tied
still wear it?
to the front. No, I haven't put it on in years, or at least a year.
Yeah.
But I have it attached to my backpack because I was doing a lot of teaching, go to universities, and, depending on the campus, they require you to wear it as soon as you get out of your vehicle. You had to wear it on campus.
Were they triggered that yours was red and it said "Make America Great Again"? Make Americans breathe again. What would yours say? I forget.
It was just a gray one. I didn't have the red one.
Okay. So, just checking.
But it's just funny to think.
I'm trying to get you canceled on your own podcast.
Oh, no, it's not going to happen. No. But yeah, no, it's amazing to think. Like we've been traveling around Maine, and a lot of times we go to, like we were at Acadia National Park, and they still had you see everyone, go in different stores, and when you see the stickers on the ground still, with the arrows pointing you, or the 6 feet of distance, and so we're still artifacts of that time.
That's a good word.
Yeah. So you still see it out there, and so it's we're not that far removed from it. So.
Not far enough. What is the best way for people who are listening to this on my podcast to follow you, John?
Yeah, everything about me is at johnsrennie.com. And there you have links to my podcast, Deep Leadership.
That was makeamericansleadagain.com. What was it?
No, it's just johnsrennie.com.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if someone wants to start, like they just figured out you're a best-smelling author. What book should they start with?
Yeah, I would say the book would be I Have the Watch, being my first book, and John actually wrote the intro to it.
The foreword.
Yeah. So, and a lot of people get us confused because they see that John wrote the foreword and then John wrote the book, and so they get confused.
And we're both young, handsome, good-looking, intelligent,
yes,
vibrant, gorgeous physiques. What else?
That's about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's easy to get us confused.
Absolutely.
My brother from another mother.
So, Coach Bru, if people want to find out more about you from my podcast, where can they go?
Best entry point, I think, is to go to brubru.com.
Bru.
That's BRU.com. Sign up there to join my email list, where I send out a different leadership tip each week. You do that, and you get a bonus, this VIP paid newsletter. It's $100 value. You get an issue of that immediately delivered to your inbox. And if you want to learn more about me, whether it's booking me to speak somewhere or looking at which of my books you'd like to purchase, just go to coachbru.com. That's coachbru.com. And for giggles and grins, I mean, you could spell that wrong and you'd still get there. You go to coachbrew.com.
And I learned that from you. If you spell my name wrong, John S. Rennie, spell John with a H or John with a Jon, like it's really spelled, you still get to my website. Yeah.
Brilliant.
I learned that from you.
Hashtag wizardry.
And the other thing, Coach Bru, if you've got how many books you've written now? I want to say 14, but it could be 16.
17 if you include my children's book.
Yeah.
18 if you include the Spanish adaptation of my children's book.
Oh, is that out now?
Yes. Yeah. Rudy el canguro que sigue adelante.
Well,
it's Rudy Kangaroo moves forward.
I love it. I see that now. If you were to say, what book should I start with if I want to learn more about Coach Bru and his philosophies about leadership? And I think you write a lot about sort of guerrilla tactics with respect to marketing and entrepreneurship.
Options for thinking differently is sort of my calling card. I would say you should start with my book, Stadium Status.
Yeah, fantastic book.
Yeah. Don't buy it on Amazon. They made $13.7 billion on Prime Day this year. He doesn't need any more of your money. Buy it at coachbrew.com. You can go to stadiumstatusbook.com. Jeff Bezos doesn't need your help. I have one kid in college an expensive private liberal arts college, and I got another one headed off to an even more expensive one a year from now. I'm going to have 2 in college, probably for the foreseeable future. Either buy a book, or I'm going to have to resort to like setting up an OnlyFans where I sell pictures of my feet on the internet.
Don't do that. I would say this, stadium status, I'll give you a pitch for that. One idea from stadium status got me $1 million of revenue in my company. One idea that I implemented from that book.
And it wasn't selling pictures of your feet on the internet.
No, it had nothing to do with OnlyFans. But so these stadium status and beyond stadium status, I highly recommend. But I would also say one of my favorite books is Seeds of Success, and that is the sleeper. And I would say get that book.
You know what that is?
What's that?
It's my worst selling book.
It should be your best selling book.
It won
absolute
3 awards, and it is my worst selling book.
It is so good.
It was adapted to a Hollywood screenplay, and it is my worst selling book. It's the most counterintuitive, ironic thing in my entire professional life. It is the way that the lifespan or the career thus far of that book.
Yeah.
Mind-boggling to me.
Well, hey, listeners to the Deep Leadership Podcast, I want to say read Seeds of Success, and I'll put a link in the show notes, my show notes for that.
I'll put a link to my own book in my show notes too, John.
I love that book. It's one of my favorites. It blew me away. I didn't expect it because I'd read your other books, and that one's so much different.
So what you're saying is the bar was set really low for you and it exceeded it?
No, it was...
Your other books are okay, and then this one was really good, John.
No. I think I was thinking it would be more like along the lines of stadium status and beyond stadium status, but this one's more about life. It's about leadership. It's about people, and it's a great book, fantastic book, and it deserves all the awards and accolades, and it should be selling more. So,
and leadership's a people business. Don't you forget it. There will be links to John's website, books, pictures of his feet in the show notes on my podcast. This has been a dual podcast by John and John. So now you can all say you have several Johns in your life.
Absolutely.
If you don't subscribe to John Rennie's Deep Leadership Podcast yet, you're listening on my platform, go subscribe. And I will shamelessly say, if you're listening to this podcast on John Rennie's Deep Leadership Podcast and you don't subscribe to mine, go to the Coach Bru podcast, subscribe, rate and review. And even if it's 0 stars, do not recommend. It's okay. Rate it, review it.
Rate it, review it. And he has the shortest podcast intro in the business.
Fun fact.
Fun fact.
Awesome. This has been great. John, take us out of here.
All right.
Or a word of wisdom.
Leadership is a people business. Never forget that.
Catch you in the next episode of my podcast and yours.
Podcast.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you for listening to Deep Leadership.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you for all you do.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. For more information and updates, please visit our website at www.deepleadershippodcast.com or johnsrennie.com. Until next time, take care.
Welcome to the Reverie Channel, where entertainment knows no bounds. Live concerts, on-demand music, documentaries, and short films, all in stunning HD. Now on Roku TV, Apple TV, and Amazon Fire. Immerse yourself from home. And on Android and iOS for those on the move. Support creators with crowdfunding donations. Fuel their creativity. Join us in shaping entertainment's future. The Reverie Channel, where every view, every donation matters.
Step inside the marketing mirror to uncover marketing secrets, discover gems, tactics, lessons, and campaigns you can use, next gen or fundamentals. Grab the marketing magic to improve your marketing and win more business.
Electricast.